All right, welcome everyone. My name is Glenn Gunderson. I'm President and CEO of YMCA of the North. Grateful to have you here at St. Paul's Eastside YMCA. We established our Y here in this community 169 years ago, 2 years before we were a state in 1856. YMCA of the North is a leading nonprofit dedicated to strengthening the foundations of community through youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. The Y is the largest nonprofit provider of childcare in the state of Minnesota and across our region. We have 55 early childcare and school-age care programs providing care for children ages 6 weeks to 5th grade. We serve over 12,000 children each year. And for at least the past 10 federal administrations, we've been a very strong partner on both sides of the aisle to drive what our communities need, and that's strong children and strong families. We're nonpartisan as an organization, and federal funding has been critical to the services that we provide to children, youth, and their families. Our programs and families depend on child care assistance, federally funded food assistance programs, and many other supports. Across the YMCA of the North, our teams remain focused on delivering needed services to our communities. Uncertainty or ambiguity in federal funding is a challenge for programs like these. The Y will always be open to welcome leaders into this space to talk about the importance of investing in our young people throughout this region. It's paramount for them as humans, and it's paramount as we grow our economy in this community and in this region. Thank you to Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan for being here today and for your advocacy for children and youth. With that, I'll turn it over to Governor Walz. Governor?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Glenn, thank you. Thank you for your leadership. I've been a proud member myself of many years of the YMCA. I know the work that you do for our communities, especially with young people. Thank you to the Lieutenant Governor for being here. You're going to hear from her. You're going to hear from the Attorney General, who has some action steps that are being put in play. And then, while not proactively speaking, will be here to help us with this is Minnesota Management Budget Commissioner Aaron Campbell and Anna Mingy here as our Budget Director. So the folks that are over there to help us answer this. Look, we're here today to talk about this. Donald Trump's reckless action cut off funding to law enforcement, farmers, schools, child care, veterans, and health care. While he was out golfing, he threw the country into crisis. This is not bold. It's not leadership. It's stupid, buffoonish, childish of exactly what they did. Child care providers across the state, law enforcement, our prisons, things that we count on, individuals on Medicare, things that we know matter to people's lives. And I want to be very clear about this. Minnesota is a state that pays far more into the federal government than we get back. Those are our dollars that he is stealing unconstitutionally. Congress, as I served, as Attorney General Ellison served, appropriates the dollars. This is so far beyond the pale to try and pull these dollars back. And the real thing about this was he has no idea. I understand this. Donald Trump has no idea the implications on this. The folks who did it very well know. This is right out of those 900 pages in their Project 2025 to undermine this country. It will not stand. It cannot stand. And I have asked our members of Congress. I've spoken with Senator Klobuchar and Smith. I've spoken with Representatives McCollum and Craig. Left messages for our other members to get on this. I have heard nothing other than Representative Emmer saying he 100% agrees with this, and this is what the American public voted for. Not a mandate to defund the YMCA, to cut funding to hospitals, to cut funding to law enforcement. Never again will the Minnesota press ever write a story about law enforcement funding without adding that Tom Emmer cut funding to police in what he supported in this. It's an outrageous power grab. It undermines Minnesotans, and I want to tell you, we are here to do all we can to protect Minnesotans, but I cannot promise you that we can make up the nearly $2 billion a month of our money that is being held illegally by the Trump administration. Dollars that make a difference in the things that we do. I would suggest that Representative Emmer stand up for the Constitution, stand up for the House of Representatives, be more concerned about helping Minnesotans than flying on Air Force One next to the president, and get this work done that needs to be done. We will do everything in our power to make sure we can fill the hole. I continue to say that to folks. MMB, our folks that are there, our agencies, the Attorney General's office, organizations and nonprofits across the state. Most folks were up all night last night as we dealt with this being thrown on there with no guidance. I know you have a lot of questions. I have a lot of questions because not one damn person thought this through. I'm hearing within the last few minutes, oh, no, the Medicare thing was just a fluke. It's unrelated to this. That is bullshit. There is absolutely no way they didn't know exactly what they were doing. We were trying to submit a $350 million reimbursement to make sure that our finances, which, by the way, we pay our bills, I pay my bills, we balance the budget in this state, I balance my budget. We couldn't submit that because of what they did. That is reckless. It's putting our credit rating in our good standing. It doesn't surprise me because this is a guy who never paid his bills, never ran a business that worked. This is not Trump stakes. This is the state of Minnesota and its people's lives. These are children in there expecting to come here, parents expecting to put them there, and now to be put at risk over this just reckless proposal or whatever this is. It was not even well thought out. But again, the folks behind it, they know what they're doing. So my words on this are going to be simple to the Trump administration. We'll see you in court. My lawyer's here, the Attorney General.
All right. Thank you, Governor. Governor, thank you very much. And as we speak at this very moment that we're talking, about 22 states, including Minnesota, are filing a lawsuit against the Trump administration for this unconstitutional action. This is a violation of the rule of law. It's violation of the constitutional function of the federal government. It takes away programs people rely on that their representatives have voted for and passed. It hurts vulnerable communities. It's an attack on science and its attack on free speech. Let me note that programs such as the Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Aviation Administration, federal other programs, agriculture, education. I have a long list, including children's programs, including the Attorney General's program to stop Medicaid fraud. And I just want to say, it's absolutely right we should stop fraud, but you can't take away our resources that we rely on to do that. And so this is deeply problematic. We are not going to stand for it. We're filing our lawsuit. We may be filed already. It was getting filed when we were driving over here. We're pursuing based on violations of the Administrative Procedures Act, that he is operating contrary to law, operating beyond his authority, and we're not going to stand for it. So let me just say, look, as my colleagues file this lawsuit, the OMB memo purports to pause all activities related to huge sections of federal funding. This is a clear violation of the Administrative Procedures Act. It violates the separation of powers. It usurps the power of Congress and has problems all over it. The Trump administration doesn't have the power to stop funding to the state of Minnesota. And the Trump administration is clearly putting vulnerable people at risk. Let me just say this to you all. I do not sit around looking for ways to sue Donald Trump. But in the 8 days that he's been in office, he's forced me to figure out ways to sue him almost every day because of his violations of the rights of the people of Minnesota. We're never going to stop. We're always going to stand up for the people of this state. And, messing around with federal funding is a very big deal. The federal government is the largest employer in our country and spends more than any other entity. $22 million of Minnesota's budget comes from the federal funding. And as the governor said, we pay more than we get back. And so we're here to put a stop to this. People in Minnesota can expect that we are going to stand up for them. The 1.4 million Minnesotans on Medicaid don't know if their benefits are going to continue. We're not certain if our Medicaid fraud unit is going to be funded. And even this morning, Meals on Wheels didn't know if they should be making their deliveries to seniors that seniors depend upon. And let me just shape this, as I mentioned the last 8 days, folks, as I hand the microphone over to my colleague and friend, Lieutenant Governor. This is on the backdrop of attacks on birthright citizenship, a 127-year-old policy founded in American constitutional law, attacks on LGBTQ community, and attacks on programs designed to redress hundreds of years of racial discrimination in the form of DEI programs. That is week one for this president. But we're not going to sit around and take it. We're going to stand up for the people of this country. Lieutenant Governor Flanagan.
Thank you, Attorney General. Well, thanks so much for being here. We were just downstairs in a classroom, and we were at a small table with a bunch of littles who were using purple Play-Doh to make different letters and identify them, and to show me a purple apple that they had made out of Play-Doh. And I share that with you because these are the folks who will be impacted by Donald Trump. Children who simply want to learn their letters and their colors and their shapes. This is not a game. These are our kids. And that's why we're all here today. I want to emphasize what the governor said. This is not constitutional. This is not good governance. And this is going to hurt people in every state. And the beauty of our government is even when we disagree, we are supposed to figure out ways to work together. We pay local and state and federal taxes so leaders at every branch can support our families. We do not and will not live in a country that's everyone for themselves. And we will fight this all the way. With that being said, I want to acknowledge that this is scary. It's exhausting to wake up every day, and we're only in week 1, to devastating news from this administration. But in Minnesota, we are here for you. We don't have all the answers yet, and we certainly need to call in our lawyers, but we will get through this, and we're in this together. The governor and I are working closely with all of our state agencies and budget team to determine the extent of this senseless decision. I would also like to add that the state uses very little federal funds compared to most, but Minnesotans rely on every single one of those dollars to eat, to work, to learn, and to literally live every single day. It's all about how this is hurting people. It's creating chaos, and it's an illegal power grab by Trump to keep Minnesota money in Washington rather than sending it back to us. So the Trump team better be ready, because I know all 50 states are in this, and they are in the same boat, and we're taking it to court, because those littles and their families and people all across the state of Minnesota deserve people who will stand up for them and fight for them. Thank you.
I'm going to have Erin Campbell come up from MMB. We don't have all this yet, but I know you want some of the details on this. I'm going to have her share a little bit of what we have right now, number of programs impacted, number of employees, those types of things, and how they directly, to give you a little bit of that.
Thank you, Governor, and good afternoon. I'm Erin Campbell. I'm the commissioner at MMB. As others have noted, there's a fair amount of ambiguity about what we're dealing with here. You've seen the memos that have come out, and not a lot of clarity there, and that is compounded by access to federal programs that we use to draw down resources that have been turned on and off throughout the day. So what I would say is that there's an awful lot that we don't know. There are just under 1,000 state programs that are funded with federal funds that are potentially impacted. We don't know to what extent they're all impacted. There will be several thousand employees who are ultimately impacted by this. There are many state employees who are funded entirely with federal funds, but there are an even more number of employees who are funded in part with federal funds, and so we are still working through that to understand what the impact is. Our estimate is that the financial impact of this is about $1.9 billion per month, if it is the case that that includes Medicaid. Without Medicaid, it is about $800 to $850 million per month. And so trying to understand the full impact and get a finer, a more accurate count on impacts on employees, programs, the people who receive programs, that's all top of mind for us today. We're really scrambling to pull that information together and hope to have more complete information to share with all of you and, frankly, our state agencies and employees as soon as possible.
Thank you. And I would just say before we take questions on this, just to be clear, agencies are preparing to implement, because unlike Donald Trump, we follow the law, and we will follow the law as it's put. And I want to make note of this, understanding the position that I'm in. I understand that the people voted, and Kamala Harris and I lost an election to Donald Trump. 77 million people voted for him. That's 23% of the population. That is not a mandate to squash the Constitution. It's not a mandate to break the law. It's not a mandate to throw out all of the things that we know make this country works well. I will work with this administration where we work with them and where they're lawful and it's in the interest, but this is not one of those. This is not one of those places. This is an illegal power grab meant to hurt the public. Why he golfs, and the sycophants in Congress apparently. Why have a Congress if they're not there to do it? Just let him appropriate. Let him decide where the money goes. You don't need Congress. That's their major responsibility. That's their number one responsibility. And they seem fine. Tom Emmer says perfectly fine. This is what we voted for. All right. I want to go back. St. Cloud, did you vote to cut funding to your police? Did you vote it to cut the funding to the prison out there? Did you vote it for the Head Start? Did you vote to cut the money for the hospitals? Because that's exactly what they did. So with that, we've got more questions and answers. Minnesotans know that we will do our best. Again, I tell you that we'll be prepared for this. Trying to cash flow this and fill the gap is very, very difficult because of the size of what they've done. With that, yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned the urgency of this, and you bring up everyone who's affected. For Minnesotans out there that woke up with this news that find out they're also affected or question they're going to be, do you have any suggestions for them? And how they can act?
Yeah, and I think this is the coming here, and it's much like we don't know all those answers. I can tell you we've got folks that worked all night on this. We've got agencies and partners, governors. I was on the phone last night with governors. We're on with the National Governors Association. That is the bipartisan group that works together. I do not know if they've gotten out a statement yet. They were working on it as of yesterday. The Attorney General's Associations are working on this together, and I think the thing many of you in this room have figured out on this too is, you think you're in a red state, things are okay? Things are not okay in red states because they're more dependent on federal services. They have more people in poverty, have less state services to provide for them. So I need to see some governors show some courage in these states, stand up and make the case and stand up, and I think that will happen. So we'll just tell them, keep watching the news. We'll try and get it out. As the commissioner said, we're not exactly certain. I do know we had a reimbursement in the tune of about $350 million that was rejected this morning.
Yeah, we tried to draw
You
down.
want- okay.
Sorry. This morning we tried to draw down, I think it was actually just over $400 million reimbursement for Medicaid, and that was that did not work. The Medicaid system was shut down. Since then, the Medicaid system has been turned back on, and we've been able to draw down those funds. But it's one example of why this is a very confusing exercise.
Commissioner, while you're up there.
Can I respond to his question
Yeah.
quickly?
Yeah.
You know, look, I think that what people can do is they can reach out to their members of Congress.
Amen.
And they can say, I got a problem with this. They can write letters to the editor, to the local newspaper. They can have community meetings. But they've got to speak up because if the millions of Americans, of Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and others say this is not okay, we believe that voice will absolutely be heard and we'll be channeling it. So.
Thank you. Commissioner, is it possible we might see the state need to pick up some of the slack on some of these programs depending on how long this freeze might last, and how could that impact the state budget where it's at right now?
I think that those are probably policy decisions in terms of whether or not we're able to do that. I think that our ability to do that is going to be very limited. I mean, if we're talking about $1 billion or $2 billion a month, I think based on our forecast, you know that would be very difficult for us to accomplish and would require really reshuffling the deck on a lot of other funding priorities in the state. And so I think to the governor's point around preparing to implement, we want to be really clear that that this is really catastrophic, and we do not know that we would have the ability to backfill.
But I do want you to know, sorry, forgive me,
Yeah.
Governor, that Democratic AGs are filing for temporary restraining order. So I don't know we don't have the exact time of day yet because this case is being filed now, like literally as we're standing here. But we're hoping that you never come to that problem because we want to get ahead of it.
Well, this is the confusion. Can I mention this? We're 34 minutes away from what they expect us to implement this. Just the recklessness. No wonder Trump University went broke. They can't manage a damn thing. If they really wanted this to happen and they really wanted to cut this, there's ways they could have gone about it. This is just buffoonish. So I want to be clear. We're trying our best because we follow the law. And think about what it did to these employees. The commissioner is operating under the assumption that we need to do this at 4 p.m. And we're trying to do that. So it's just, I hope Minnesotans understand, even if you're supportive of all of this, even if you don't care what happens to those kids downstairs, this is like the least effective, legal, and decent way to go about it. So, yeah.
I know you touched on this a little bit, but what do you make of that notice from the DOJ to law enforcement agencies that federal funding could be on hold for recruitment efforts?
Well, it is. They defunded the police, and they said it was okay with them. Like, I don't know how many times I can scream this, and we're working, we're trying. I'm being very judicious last week of things that are coming out there, understanding how we make this, but this is outrageous. So let's be clear, and that puts us at risk. Programs that are at risk, we haven't even touched on, because we don't know the extent of this. The things that don't go directly through the straight, like NIH funding. If you get funding cut to a research project that's 7 years in the making, and they don't get the funding, that's the end of that. You don't just get to go back and put the money back in it again. So we're in contact with our nonprofits. We saw they were out there, in contact with the university, in contact with the Mayo Clinic, but it's just another one of those that it's just, I don't ever think, and that's why we came here, and I appreciate you all coming down here, that the decision he made impacted those little ones downstairs. It impacted those teachers that are there. It impacted the family. This is what they never, it's always fun and game to talk about cuts until you want to be specific about it, and they never do that.
Going back to the budget, you've got enough going on with the House not functioning. I mean, where do you see the budget going? I mean, should Minnesotans be worried about it, dragging on, going to a special session? How does this impact that?
Here in Minnesota? No, I would encourage them. The Supreme Court made it clear last week that the illegal power grab needed to end. We all know it's 67-67. Get back together. Now more than ever, we need them in there because we're going to need some help. When these things go through, and I assume he's going to continue on with what he's doing, we're going to need the Minnesota legislature to be there to provide some of that firewall, and we're going to need some help. So I fully expect them to get back to work. As far as our budget of putting out there, yeah, it's going to be dramatically impacted because we're dependent on those foreign funds or those federal funds. And I don't know how many times, and I hope this story gets out there, Minnesota is a state that pays more in. These are our tax dollars that we already paid. Our duly elected members of Congress enacted them. It was signed into law by the president, and we are now paying the bills on those things. And he said no. I know why he went bankrupt. You've got to pay your bills. This is not going forward. This is not other things. And the vagueness is that it has communist or Marxism in there. I guess that's our roads. I got to tell you, nobody built a private road in this state. He's right. We collectively built those roads together. Is that what we're supposed to interpret? That we can't spend any money on roads because it has communist undertones or whatever the nonsense in their letter was? This isn't even Banana Republic territory. This is beyond that, what they've done.
Governor, we've heard from Senator Tina Smith saying that some layoffs have started as soon as today for some health care community centers in Minnesota. Is that something you're aware of? Are you expecting to see more layoffs in the coming days, Commissioner Kim?
So I'm not certain in that particular circumstance what's happening there. Those are not state employees, and we don't know the answer to that yet. That's part of what we're trying to assess right now.
Could you know if you'll have to furlough state employees if this continues?
It's a possibility if we need to implement this, if this isn't stopped, it is a possibility that we would need to furlough employees, but we do not know that for sure yet.
Commissioner, it sounds like there's Medicaid spending accounts for about half of the funding that the state receives. What other programs, what other chunks of programs does the 800 or so million go towards?
I'm going to see if Anna Minke, our budget director, could answer that in more specificity for you.
Thanks. So the next, after Medicaid, the next largest federal program, sort of that we're bringing in, it would be SNAP, so food assistance. We also have federal funding for our basic health program, otherwise known as Minnesota Care. That's over $500 million a year. Then there's a lot of federal transportation funding, things like roads and bridges, both state highways and local roads and bridges, our local airports. Then things like federal housing funding, Section 8 is a large funding line. Our school meals, the National School Breakfast and Lunch Program is a significant line item. Special education, federal Title I education funding for low-income school districts. heating assistance, or the LIHEAP program. And then another one I'd highlight is county funding for child support. Those are a number of sort of large line items. But we'd say, as the commissioner mentioned, it's almost 1,000 different federal awards that we're working through. Those collectively make up a really large portion.
And 1.9 billion is if it's an across the board stoppage.
That's right.
with
That's
Medicaid.
Yep.
And we're thinking airport, disaster assistance, other things that are already in the pipeline that haven't been figured. Again, the numbers that go to things like the NIH that employ Minnesotans, Small Business Administration, loans that were put on hold, student loans, people ready to get their student loans to start second semester that just got started, all of those things.
I know they did a follow-up memo saying that it's not gonna be across the board, you're still looking for clarity. Have they given you any more clarity as of this afternoon?
No.
They've said, oh, it won't be, student loans, Pell Grants, SNAP benefits, but you're saying you're concerned about that.
You seen that legal document? Did they send that out?
I have not, I've just seen the memo.
Yeah, some guy in the White House just put it on a tweet.
Yeah.
Clowns. Clowns. We can't operate like that. These are legally binding things. Hold them and us to the same standard. No, I have no idea on this. When I was coming in here, I was told they said it was just a coincidence that the Medicare system, for the first time in history, froze out payments. Be a skeptical press, please. Be a skeptical press on this. I don't know. There's no guidance on this. When we got it last night, governors are calling each other wondering, where's this going? This is, I'll come back to this. I did another thing Donald Trump never did. I conceded an election when it happened. If you want to do these things and you believe you have the mandate to defund child care and police and all that, then go to Congress, pass the bill, sign it, and do it. And we won't plan for the money. But this is passed years ago. These are programs that were in the years ago. They're money that was legally appropriated. And look, I'm not going to bite on all this. I recognize that chaos and confusion and anger, somehow, this is not a bug. This is a feature for them. They get some type of enjoyment out of this, apparently. But it is real people's lives. So I got to be honest with you. I don't know the answer at this point, and we have gotten, I've asked my team here, have we gotten anything officially?
No.
Okay, I think we can wrap it there.
Well, have you seen, other than like the Medicaid portal, are there any other like federal portals that are down throughout the day or are currently down?
Just off the top of my head, the Head Start drawdown was down for a period of time. I understand that is back up. The system that we use to draw down UI funds was down for a period of time. I think that's back up. I'm sure that there are others.
Corrections.
Corrections.
UI funds?
Unemployment insurance, excuse me.
And I just wanted to bring up, since we are at the YMCA, I wanted to just name one additional dynamic, which is we have a robust nonprofit community here in the state of Minnesota. And in many ways, we work in partnership with that nonprofit community. They are also now in chaos and crisis and uncertain about funding from the federal government. So in many ways, we work together. It is a web that supports our state as a whole. That uncertainty will continue the cascade of this impact. And I just wanted to name that. And I hope in your conversations, you're also reaching out to some of those nonprofits to have these conversations because they do a lot of the work that allows us to have one of the best states in the country.
And again, I can't stress this enough. Why do you think these portals came back on right now? Because the American public said, are you out of your damn minds?
That's right.
And everybody said it, so they came back. These people control our nuclear weapons. These people make decisions with our allies. This is a great example of the ineptitude and chaos. This is not conservatism. This is not anything. This is just amateur hour cruelty and throwing things in. Can you imagine how much money this has cost? We have hundreds of people today that were focused on this, and that's happening across the country. So look, to the public here in Minnesota, this is not how things work. I know there are conservatives out there who disagree with this type of chaos and things. It's clear they're already hearing the backlash on this. But at the end of the day, It's what they do in the quiet. It's what they do when you're not watching. They made it very clear on this. They do not care about the well-being. They sure the hell don't care about the price of eggs. They care about a whole lot of other things that don't impact positively people in Minnesota. And that's why the team here, why folks in Minnesota, why I encourage the legislature, have the Republicans come back, get your power sharing agreement, and let's get moving to move things forward. That's what Americans expect, not this chaos. So thank you all for coming out.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.